Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I have a great show today. Settle back in your seats because you're going to learn something very important today about innovation. You know, when we think about companies, whether it's small to mid-sized companies, Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 10 companies, every single company in the world is interested in innovation and, of course, making their people better. And we came across a very interesting tool, a very interesting system that has been put together by Jonathan Rosenfeld. He is the president and CEO of the Innovating Edge. And, of course, his partner and co-founder, Dr. Jerry Fisher, who they call the Chief Innovation Officer or Chief Innovating Officer. I love it. These guys are fantastic, by the way. We had a pre-interview with them, and they're just full of energy. But what they have is something called the ISPI. And if you've never heard of it, in the unlikely event you haven't heard of it, it's a system and a test. And I took the test myself. And when it spit out what I was all about and how the unique parts of my personality could be used as a CEO, as a leader, as someone that innovates, I was blown away. I showed it to my wife and she said, wow, that test absolutely nailed it. I mean, it says everything about you, and it's an opportunity for C-suite executives to really use a tool to really be able to continue innovating their company. So I'm so delighted to have both of these gentlemen on the show. Dr. Fisher, I'll start with you. Welcome to the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Well, thank you for this. I love your series, and I love the people you've interviewed, and looking forward to talking.
Yeah, it's so great what you've put together. And of course, Jonathan, the president, CEO, and co-founder. I mean, when we had our pre-interview, you got me so excited, Jonathan, about what you're doing. Let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet. Jonathan, we'll start with you. Tell us about the Innovating Edge, and then we'll get into it.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Andy, for letting us be on this amazing show. We love .com Magazine. We love the people you reach out to. The synergy is exactly where we are. You deal with the people who we are looking for. Innovating Edge was the provider of the Innovation Strength Preference Indicator, or ISPI, as you said, for short. It is an instrument like the MRI that looks at the invisible. The MRI shows you what you can't see with your naked eye. Our instrument shows you the invisible elements in innovation, the human elements. All of us have these traits, these elements that help either make or break your innovation efforts. We have an instrument that will clearly show anybody, quick, fast, easy, how to find the invisible elements that help project and catapult your innovation efforts, making nothing being impossible.
Yeah, I love it. Making nothing impossible. I love that so much, Jerry. Dr. Fisher, let's talk about that. Nothing is impossible over my shoulder. But when you designed this, Dr. Fisher or Jerry, what was going on in your mind in terms of sort of putting it together? How does it help companies move forward and become a much stronger, innovative company?
Yeah, good question, because there's a lot of things that make innovation happen in a person, and they're often invisible. They're not things that are on a resume. They're things that are just part of your personality. And the exciting thing is if you can identify what those are, like developing new ideas, ideation, like being able to integrate well with people and pull out their ideas, creativity, and being able to get them to come up with things that really break the box, not just think inside the box, but outside the box, and then break it and come up with a brand new one. And that's what this instrument does. And as a result, that has a huge impact on income statement for an executive, on the top line, the cost structure, and then obviously the bottom line.
Yeah, we want to talk about that because in this day and age, as you both know, business is a matter of incremental increases of either top line or bottom line. And anything you can do to make an investment in your company to help those things get better is a great investment. And of course, the power of this ISPI, there's so many companies now using it. You've done such a great job with it. People are either saving money, making more money, or a combination thereof by using it. But one thing, Jonathan, you mentioned is that it's like a CAT scan or an MRI technology, which really uses advanced digital science and really nature to reveal what was once invisible. And I love that so much. Let's talk about that a little bit because that's super cool.
For sure. So making the invisible visible. So I use the MRI or CAT scan as an element or a comparison because the MRI is a digital instrument. It's extremely powerful nowadays. It does show the invisible. When we were getting our patent, looking at our patent, the U.S. Patent Office blew us away with their comments they said, congratulations, you discovered a new law of nature here. And that is amazing. So a lot of our clients who are on the cutting edge of business and technology and military, they are trying to very much and very quickly get a grasp of this new law of nature. So when you're looking at invisible elements, which the ISPI shows and reveals, these elements are natural in all of us. You just can't see them. But if you can see them, imagine taking a deck of 52 cards and telling your team, out of these cards, pick your winning hand, but they're all face down. If you had an instrument like the ISPI to turn them all over, now pick your winning hand. It's easy. The invisible became visible. And that's what we do. That's why our clients love coming to us. That's why we're finding our phones ringing off the hook. With the advent of AI exploding onto the screen, as if companies are trying to integrate, merge, do things faster. After the pandemic, the whole world had to find a new way to do business. What they found is people had invisible traits that started showing up. They found ways to do it. This instrument really helps you do it faster, quicker, and it helps reduce failure rates. How many companies are trying to take on a project and it fails, and they really don't know why? It's the invisible. It's the invisible elements that will protect you.
You've probably seen the studies. McKinsey looked at generative AI projects, and sadly, 85% fail. They don't make it. But wonderfully, the 15% that do pay for the 85% that don't. Now, if we could reduce that failure rate to 70%, not only do we turbocharge, but we explode with the potentials. And that's what we're working on. That's what we're doing with companies like Raytheon and ExxonMobil, and also all sorts of mid-sized and regular-sized companies.
Yeah, I love it. Now you're working with some of the biggest and the best and the brightest people in the world. Of course, Jerry and Jonathan combined. I mean, you are a dynamic duo. Jerry, the types of, when the company reaches out to you and they say, hey, we've heard about the Innovating Edge, we've heard about this ISPI. Let's talk it through so that people really understand it. Talk about the test, who's reaching out, why do the companies want this test at a C-level and even beyond into the company?
A really good example is, especially today because of generative AI, it's literally, if you're not on top of it, your chances of extinction are excellent. So somehow you need to be on top of it. And there was just a survey yesterday that was in Fortune magazine that said 97% of CEOs have something moving ahead on generative AI, but only 14% think they've got a program that's going to work. Those are the people who call us. They go, we don't want to be in that, don't have a program that's going to work on something that could bring about extinction. So we need to talk about how do we put together most of them refer to it, the innovation squads, the AI squads that can really, for each element of my company, be it marketing, be it the financial section, be it the R&D section, the manufacturing section, each of them have to have an innovation squad that goes in and says, how do we use it? But the squad has to be ultimately productive and properly matched, so that it's not being dysfunctional in the conflict, dysfunctional in their communication, which will happen if you don't know the invisible elements.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Turning the deck of cards over. You know, you have a deck of cards, you put 52 cards out, but you don't see what the cards are. And if you're running a business, right, and you don't see what the cards are underneath, then you're really trying to build a business with two hands tied behind your back. And Jonathan, you say you turn the cards over with the system. You turn the cards over so you can see all the cards. And as a manager or a C-level executive, when you're seeing what's happening within your C-level executive team and then the rest of your company, it's very eye-opening. So let's talk about the success stories that you've had, Jonathan. How eye-opening has this ISPI been for some of the large companies that you're currently doing business with?
Glad you brought that up. One of our favorite clients and who are using our instrument every day throughout their entire organization and throughout their culture. The company, small little company, many of you have heard as Raytheon. So Raytheon is a wonderful aerospace and technology company, and they have been doing for many, many years what they call the Raytheon Challenge. This challenge is where they get their biggest and their brightest and put them all into a room. And they started asking them, let's brainstorm, let's come up with new products, new ways to do things. And questions start coming up and they put it on the wall. But sure enough, someone might say, we don't know how to do that, or that's not our business. And what they are not realizing when that happens, you're shutting down your innovation. So the person who came up with the idea said, oh, you don't like it? Well, I'll sit here and just sit on my BlackBerry or on my iPhone and wait the meeting. With the ISPI, and here's how our clients are using it, and here's how it's so powerful. With the ISPI, for the first time, Raytheon was able to look at their entire population and truly see who are the out-of-the-box thinkers, who are the smash-the-box thinkers, who are in-the-box thinkers, and who are the Six Sigmas. When you put them all together at once, you have opposite ends trying to do the same project. So they used ISPI because it's the only tool they found that can do this. Separate their out-of-the-box thinkers from the in-the-box thinkers. They bring in the out-of-the-box thinkers and say, hey, brainstorm new ideas. And they just start coming up with ideas and filling that pool up. Amazing. When you get pioneers and extreme pioneers together, instead of somebody saying, we can't do that, they say, oh, if we could do that, we could do this, and we could do that. And they ping off of each other. Once they fill their pool full of ideas, all right, thanks, guys, got enough. They bring in the builders. And again, the ISPI is the only instrument that let them truly separate this scientifically, not by gut, not by what they thought, scientifically, turning those cards over. They brought the builders in, and instead of asking them to brainstorm, they said, look at all these ideas that got generated. Which one's the most viable? Which ones are fast to go? And they're looking at this idea, and the builders would be like, what the heck? But instead of shooting it down, they have to. This is their nature. Start road mapping. How do they even get to that idea? If you can start making a roadmap, then you can start strategizing. You can actually start making the invisible visible. And again, as I said before, because I see it right behind you, nothing becomes impossible.
I love it. I love it, Jonathan. Jerry, let's talk about it a little bit because, I mean, the ISPI, it's being actively used in companies and organizations throughout the world. Lockheed Martin, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, ExxonMobil, the U.S. Department of Defense, NASA, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Army, you name it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty heady stuff. So what's it like for your team to be working with these powerful companies? Is there a different approach for the younger entrepreneurs maybe watching the show who haven't had the opportunity to work with these giant companies? What's the approach working with the giant companies in your career sort of trajectory? Is it the same working with the large companies as it has been with the smaller companies, or is it different?
It's different. The larger companies will oftentimes, by the fact that they've been successful and they're large, they become very bureaucratic and they become very stuck in their way. They want to move out, but they really don't. And as a result, you really have to put some dynamite under them to get them to say, okay, if I don't do this, then I could become the Blockbuster Video, which they don't want to be. I can become the, oh my God, I'm not here anymore company. Extinction is so scary for some of the large ones. So they're working hard to try to do that. For the smaller ones, though, they know they can come on and be the disruptor and oftentimes become the large one. If you look at the S&P 500, for example, only 10% of those that were here 20 years ago are still on it. 90% are gone. And that's the thing that you can become if you're the young entrepreneur, part of that 90% that joins the S&P 500, that becomes the disruptor, especially today with this generative AI. I'll just give you one thing that I just saw the other day. It was on Fortune magazine a couple of days ago. There was a study at Harvard Business School, and they looked at new CEOs, and they found out that 40% of them within 15 months aren't there anymore because they're not doing their job. They're not matching the income statement requirements that are necessary to manage a company. And so that's what the new guy can do. That's what the young entrepreneur can do, is come in and say, I can do that. I can build a company that matches that income statement, that becomes a disruptor. And that's the difference between the two, the energy in the new company versus the bureaucracy of the old.
You know, Andy, as Jerry mentioned this, a saying that we like to say at our company, companies don't innovate. People do. Exactly. It is the people in the company. And as you asked about the larger working difference between a larger company and a smaller company, the larger companies, they have more people. So they come to us and they use the ISPI with their thought leaders. One of the things they also get out of it, the invisible elements that they get, is who within their company are the politicians, who are the Rambos, the people who know how to move an idea through a larger corporate chain. If you're in a smaller company, like a medium-sized fish in a small pond feels like a big fish, right?
Yeah.
So in a smaller company, when they apply the ISPI, they don't have to use as many because there's not as many people. However, when they do it right, the impact is much faster and much greater. Yep. And there's more at stake, a lot more at stake for a smaller company.
Yeah, I love it. And of course, something that caught our attention early on when we started looking at your company, investigating it, doing our vetting, you have this super interesting sort of proposition called human intelligence in artificial intelligence. And I really love that. Which one of you want to take that on and tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll start. Maybe Jerry can chime in. But that's actually one of the things our clients are calling right away, right now. Our phone is ringing. The hot issue is AI. There's not only artificial intelligence, but exploding on the scene is generative AI, and being able to leverage the HI, or the human intelligence in AI, is something that we're helping our clients be able to navigate and implement using the AI ISPI. The human intelligence in AI is important because when you don't understand the human element, every AI journey starts with a step. If you're pointing the wrong direction, over time, you're way off course. How do you see, you want to tell them about how you see the ISPI and the income statements?
A lot of people say that they're afraid that the artificial intelligence is going to replace the human. No, it's the machine by which the human gets their creativity, so it's unleashed, so you don't have to do the mundane stuff. AI gets rid of the copywriting and all the basic stuff, and you can go out and you can be brilliant and you can be genius because you're not tied in the details. And that's the beauty of the human intelligence. It's let free by this AI done properly. And instead of it coming in and taking over us, it just expands us. We're going to become more creative and more successful than ever. Just one quick thing. I heard Jamie Dimon, who's not exactly a flamboyant, exaggerated guy, say that he thinks within 5 years, and this really caught my attention, we could move down because of the productivity improvements he's seeing to a 30 or 25-hour week, and we could afford to do that. And I looked at that and said, whoa, no, that's worth it. That's exciting. And but you have to focus on the human playing the proper role with AI and harnessing it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Jerry, because the ISPI, when I look at it, it's really sort of the vital tool, for innovation focused and AI focused organizations really to rely on to ensure that they have the right person in the right leadership role at the right place at the right time. And they're making decisions based on real data, not just their gut feeling, not some, throw a dart against a board kind of thing. Let's talk about that a little bit, Jerry, because that's sort of the real key here, I think.
Yeah, that's the key, is that this is a scientific instrument that, beautifully enough, has a face validity of 90%. The Center for Creative Leadership, a very large consulting firm all over the world, looked at it and evaluated it and came up with what's called, if you know anything about stats, a Cronbach Alpha, which is 8.7, the highest I've ever seen. Ordinarily, a Cronbach Alpha is like 7.2 or 5.2. So the part I like about it, and that's what got me excited, was when the scientists there identified it as something that's truly accurate and only takes 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes, people react like you did. I did the same thing. I looked at it, I said, my God, this is me. No question. It knows me. And it does. That's the beauty. It's your picture of yourself that comes up and then tells you about yourself that you didn't necessarily talk about before or have names for before.
Yeah, I love it. Now, Jonathan, we take the tests. We're a big company. We're Exxon. We're Department of Defense, U.S. Army, Navy. I mean, you're throughout the whole defense sector. They take the test. And a number of the C-level executives take the test. Maybe some of the other people take it as well. Then what happens? Do you guys offer consultation after the test is done? What's the next step after the tests are taken?
I'm glad you brought that up. So the instrument or test is available online. It's quick, about 15 minutes to take it, 64 questions. After you take it, you are given an incredibly robust report. I think it's over 36 pages that break down each of the invisible elements and how your score resulted in that. Afterwards, our clients are immediately able to start looking at their results. Depending on if you're one of our clients like Hallmark uses it for benchmarking of all their senior leadership. So immediately you can start looking at individual results. Depending on what you purchase, we offer team packages. So let's say you and your entire team, you're ExxonMobil, you're big. So you got your C-suite, you have your geological division, you have your fuel divisions. The divisions can take it separately. You can get team reports that show you everybody in your realm, everyone in your team, and what is the balance of innovation you have. For instance, if you are a company and we've seen this many, many times. Everyone's pretty smart. Everyone likes working there, but they were having a hard time coming up with new ways to do things. They were looking at disruption coming off the back end by competitors. Well, when we used the ISPI, we found that, everybody is very out of the box thinking. They love how to risk. They understand it. But when you start looking at some invisible elements, one of those elements is called action or prudence. They were so prudent, almost everyone on the board. They came up with ideas, but they kept saying, well, let's look at it again. Let's look at it again. And they missed the boat because of their prudence. Now, having the ISPI allowed them to see we're too heavy on our prudence. We need to bring in people who have the element of action base to keep us moving. How many times have you or your clients and the people you introduced to are sitting there saying, we're stuck, we're paralyzed, we're not moving? It's because if you can find the invisible element and have people on your board that is action-based, it makes other people have to take action as well. And that is incredible. So afterwards, if you want to go further and deeper on the ISPI, there's entire workshops, application workshops. We offer certification so that you can actually start digging into the mega data and the big data behind the ISPI. And we give you tools and look at that data and look at your larger populations so that you can fine tune, just like a chemist, fine tune your AI squads, your C-suite, and figure out what is it that you are challenged to do and what you need them to do. And do you have the right people, as you said, right people in the right seat right now?
Yep, great example. Prudence is a great example. Everybody wants their prudence. You don't want to go out and do crazy, stupid things, but you don't want 85, 90% of your people to be prudent. You want maybe 50 or 40, depending upon the project you're working on. Generative AI, maybe only 30. But if that's what you have is 85, 90, that's where that failure rate of 85% comes in. You got too many people who don't like to take action or are afraid. On the other hand, you don't want a whole bunch of action people. You don't want 90% action. Otherwise, you're likely to go out and make a mistake and do the wrong thing.
So this is called passion on the ISPI. Yeah. It is an invisible element. When you, and if you think about it, and you're the people who are watching this, when you look at your team, not on a resume, not in a job interview, will you see if a person's action-based or prudent? You won't even know that until after you hired them, onboard them. And if you need action on your team, you can't see this without the ISPI. And that's what's so powerful. That's why so many of our clients are coming to us, because they do need to reduce their costs. They do need to innovate faster. And they do need to be able to see the invisible elements that will either make or break their initiatives.
They use it to filter their candidates. You say you have 5, 6 people. You say this could be the person for this position. They got the experience, the results, all the things we're looking for. But then when you put the ISPI element together, you say, but what we need is, in this particular case, we need action-based. Or I'll give you another one that really is extremely powerful. Need to control. Some people need to be in control and say it's my way or the highway. And that's how I run the ship. And if you're in charge of finance and you're in charge of people putting numbers together, that's a good thing. I don't want to get creative here. No creativity. This is how we do the balance sheet. This is how we do the income statement. But I don't want to put that guy in charge of R&D. But sometimes I do, because I don't realize that. I don't realize that he's a control freak. I don't realize that it's my way or the highway. And that's why the innovation doesn't happen. And that's what the ISPI measures.
Let me go a little further, Andrew, because you asked how a client, after they take the ISPI, what they can do with it. So your ExxonMobil, use that again. Or actually, an even better example is a real client of ours, Hallmark. So Hallmark had all their senior leadership, from Hallmark Channel, Hallmark Holdings, Hallmark Greeting Cards, to all of their subsidiaries, all the senior leadership. When one of their senior board members was getting ready to retire, they were like, you've been with us for so long. Well, because they used the ISPI to benchmark a successful candidate, they were looking at headhunting firms at $200,000, $300,000 to try and find a person to replace that. Well, they were able to use the ISPI to go right into the database and compare and benchmark. Well, they end up finding a perfect match in their subdivision called Crayola. And a middle manager guy in Crayola had the exact same totem or match that this senior person on the board had. They brought him in, they interviewed, perfect match. That became their new board member. They saved over $300,000 because they were able to find the invisible elements that made a successful candidate. It had nothing to do with how many years they've been doing their job, how many companies they worked with. It is the invisible elements that they aligned with, and that made it really powerful, made it fast, made it simple, made it easy.
Yeah, I love it. Of course, you talk about action and prudence. You just mentioned sort of the bottom line with one of your clients that saved $300,000. That happens left and right with you guys and your system. And we think about it, we've interviewed some people, obviously, that have been on Shark Tank. You watched the show, and you know that Mark Cuban once said that perfection is the enemy of entrepreneurship. And this sort of falls into that, right? Because if you're want to be too perfect, you never let the reins go. And maybe, your system can help these companies and any company figure out when to let the reins go, when not to let the reins go, which guys or gals in the right spot, which one's in the wrong spot. I want to segue into entrepreneurship because you guys you look at you two are a great team. Jonathan's wearing the shirt and the tie, and Dr. Jerry, Fisher, he's kind of kicked back a little bit, has his hat on. Let's talk about it a little bit because I look at you gentlemen as sort of the yin and the yang of each other. You have this great sort of flow, this great interaction. How important that is for companies in the leadership team to have this kind of sort of synergy, and how important that is to the success of a company? I think, Jerry, we'll start with you, then maybe Jonathan, you can respond to that.
Yeah, that's the key. You can see that go back way to the ultimate entrepreneur and successful innovator, Steve Jobs. Remember his informal dress? And he changed the whole way in which, everybody was up with their white shirt and their tie, and he came up and stood there and they said, "Oh my God." As a result, people came up and talked to him, and they thought they could approach Steve. They thought he was somebody who would listen to him and also could help brainstorm with them. And instead of them saying, "This is the idea," and Steve goes, "Yeah," they talk back and forth and they come up with a brand new idea. And that's the kind of thing you need to be able to figure out. Who are the people and how do you have that proper mix?
I'm glad Jerry mentioned Steve Jobs. So looking at entrepreneurs, when Apple was starting, you had Steve and you had Woz. Yeah. The beautiful thing is we can see with our own eyes how different they are. If we had the opportunity, but they never did the ISPI, they're opposites. Steve Jobs did not create the iPhone. He had the idea. So you had one pioneer, out-of-the-box thinker, but it took the other end, Woz, to figure out step by step what you need to have to make that happen. When we look at, I'm glad you called us yin yang. I feel that like sometimes a lot. There are examples throughout history of entrepreneurs and organizations, Kate and Andy Spade, the Wright brothers, Warren, Walt Disney, where it's leveraging our opposites. That's how even Innovating Edge came to be. We got to meet each other, and we naturally, in so many elements, we have a lot in common, but we have a lot invisible that are almost opposites. But when you find the right balance, like two wings of a plane, the two engines, when they both fire, that plane takes off. If one engine was going, the other one, you just circle and circle. And so it's really important that when you look at entrepreneurship, understanding what is your co-balance, what is the other side. Recently, Jerry and I were leaving Dubai on a cruise ship, and one of the things I always find fascinating with these multi-billion-dollar cruise ships with 5,000 people on it, a pilot steps on to help that cruise ship get out of dock. It's not the captain.
That's right.
And so at times with entrepreneurs, knowing when the right person in the right seat at the right time, you have to sometimes know how to let go of the realm to let somebody who knows and navigates certain waters. I see too many times we see startups, mergers where entrepreneurs are trying to do something. And as Jerry mentioned, it's my way, the highway. They don't know how to let somebody navigate different waters. That's going to be critical. If any entrepreneur wants to get to the next level, wants to grow, you have to learn to leverage the differences and put the right people in the right seat at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I love it. I love it. I mean, for the entrepreneurs watching the show, rewind what Jonathan just said. We always ask our entrepreneurs at the end of the show, as you guys know, give some advice to the younger entrepreneurs about how to get through a tough time, how to move forward. And Jonathan, that idea of the big cruise ship coming out of the port, but the captain doesn't take it out of the port. They bring another captain on to pull it out of the port. He specializes in that port departure. Then he turns it back over to the regular captain. Before I let you go, I'll ask Jerry the same question. Jerry, based on your background and experience, we have a lot of younger entrepreneurs watching the show who maybe are hitting a tough time. Maybe they're hitting a roadblock. They freeze in the frame a little bit. What advice can you give to the younger entrepreneurs about keep on pushing, keep on getting stronger as time goes by and never look in that rear view mirror so that you can keep moving forward in your business?
Sure can. I've done a lot of work, 25 years working with young presidents, if you know what that is. That's about 35,000 presidents all over the world. You have to have 5 million in sales, 50 employees, or you get as high as Steve Jobs or whomever. And what happens for them is at 50, by the way, they give them a rocking chair and they're an old president, just for any information. But what they do is they get together once a month with other people their age, not other people who are, been around all the time. And they talk about each other in an informal board of directors. And they say, here's my problem. Here's my opportunity. What do you guys think? That's the most valuable thing I've seen that can take an entrepreneur, young, who's afraid and not sure what I can do, and hear other people say, I felt the same thing, and here's what I've done. And they can propel you in ways that you never thought. You can become 10x, 20x, but make sure you're getting the advice from other people who have the same experience and also the same kind of energy you have. If you're 25, you want to change the whole world. If you're 85, why change it? It's fine. So at any rate, yes, that's one of the things I'd say.
I love Jerry often says this to entrepreneurs, startups, and when we talk to colleges as well. You either have a choice. You can be either the disruptor or the disrupted.
Yeah.
It is your choice, and how you approach and move forward and how agile you'll be will help determine what you're going to be and where you want to be.
I love it. Be the disruptor or the disrupted. Say that 10 times real fast.
You can do that.
I love it. I'm going to bring you back on the show. I think we're going to entitle it Be the Disruptor or the Disrupted, and we'll do a full. I'm going to have to book you guys in for an hour because there's so much to unpack with both of you. What you're doing at the Innovating Edge is amazing. I mean, the ISPI, the world's leading innovative instrument, and really the only instrument of its kind, is really remarkable. Jonathan, I want to thank you, and Dr. Fisher, Jerry, of course, for coming to .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. Hey, this has been fantastic, and thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank
you.
Awesome.
Thank you. We look forward to being back on again soon.
Would love it. Thank you again.